It's raining, you got here late, your feet are wet, but you're here anyway. Thanks for coming, you know? The next one is familiarity. Basically, we need to transform what is unknown into something that is known. Sorry, just... it's important that we don't let students feel like strangers. Of course, they will feel like strangers in the first weeks of lesson. But you know that one student that people never remember the name of? And then like 2 months through the term, they'll go, and I was talking to him. And then, this is because they're not familiar with each other. Or it may be because they're not familiar with each other. Or because they never bothered to learn another person's name. And I think maybe there are things we can do there as teachers to help that not happen. Remember that we will be affected by the actual imagined or perceived presence of someone. This can be used in our favor. So instead of just telling people, I don't know, oh, you should know his name, it's Fabrício, and then move on, why don't you go and say, okay, ask his name and ask something that he likes to do. Oh, that's my name and I like to do that. Oh, that's so nice. Okay, let them get to know each other, you know. These are some of the ways that we can use to increase familiarity in our lessons. So first of all, randomly assign seats. That's a very practical idea. Vary patterns of interaction. So today you're talking to this person, then you're talking to that other person, then you're talking in a huge group, then you're talking in trios, then in pairs, then always with different people. Don't allow cliques to happen. You know those people? They'll arrive and they'll do like, yeah, no, Carlos is sitting here. And then Carlos doesn't even come to class. Make sure students are present even when they're absent. So mention them. You know, you came and you're always talking, I don't know, Carlos came, and Luis always sits close to Carlos, so I can ask Carlos, hey, is Luis okay? Oh yeah, no, okay, I'm just asking just to see if he's coming today. Do you guys have Luis's WhatsApp number? Have you talked to him today? Like, make the person present. Remind students that that person is there. Or even use them as examples when you practice language, I don't know. You know the comparison lesson? Fulano is taller than Fulano. Use those people who are absent. Use people's names. Help students realize what they appreciate about each other. It's nice to see when students actually admire that one student who is the more capable peer, and they all resort to that learner, and it's amazing because that learner is sort of your helper in class. What can we do then to help the other one, the one who has difficulties and that people always do like, okay, let's work with him, to actually, you know, be part of the group as well? There is an exercise that you can do. It's a feedback moment. I don't know, let's say you're teaching adjectives, you're talking about personalities, you're talking about things people did in the past. Use these moments to actually get people to interact genuinely. So think of something somebody did this semester and that you found really nice. And then they'll actually have to remember things people did and tell them, look, the other day you brought muffins, I was hungry, you gave me part of your muffin. That was really nice of you, thank you. Or, the other day I was feeling a little bit sad, and then I sat with your group, and you made many jokes. That was really nice. Things that actually people would appreciate and would help them practice language, for that matter. It's something as simple as that. And then, by doing these things, we can actually build rapport and group cohesiveness. You know, people getting to actually want to work together. We need to ensure that proximity exists, so they need to know what they have in common. Proximity will foster interaction, because once I know that you have been to China and I'm planning to go to China, we may actually start talking about it, because I'm planning my next trip for December, I don't know. And interaction may foster familiarity, which will then, because I'm going to remember that Luis went to China and Lisha has 8 cats, and I didn't ask your name, I'm so sorry. Murilo, and Murilo doesn't like to have, you know, his feet wet, or Olivia loves her history teacher. This is important. I know people, and let students know their partners, their peers. With the person next to you again, and now I want you to be using each other's names. Think of one example of something you can do in class that will foster proximity or interaction or help them get familiar with each other. You're going to have around 1 or 2 minutes now, okay? Just checking. Do you have to use each other's names? Yes. And do you have to think about all of them? Do you have to think of all of? Not necessarily. One of them. And you have to think of how many ideas? One. One thing. Off you go. Not create. Just think of an idea. For example, I'll repeat myself. But when the student gets late, instead of telling him you shouldn't be late, I'm going to say, "Oh, it's nice that you came." So this may help with proximity. Sorry, thank you. Did you already know each other? I want you talking to new people in the next interaction, okay? Okay, guys, thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you, guys. Great, thanks, Alberto. Wait a second. Can I have someone new share one of the ideas you heard? You guys at the back? You seem to have very interesting ideas. Can you share something you have discussed?
Oui?
Yes, I heard you say something about an icebreaker.
We were talking about, this is a classic thing in terms of English teaching, which is the old traditional find out.
Okay. Can you tell us how it works? Sorry, what's your name again? Fahi.
Yeah.
Okay, Fahi, can you share how that works?
You can apply at any level, and of course, the lower levels, you're going to start with basic statements, and upper levels, you can make it more advanced and challenging. For example, you make a list, yes, items. Find out who. Lives on a tree house, has 6 cats, or 8, I don't know.
8.
Yeah, 8. Has been to China or speaks Chinese. You can level the language, and then they have to talk among themselves to find out who the person is.
Yes, and you know how interesting that can be. Imagine learners, when you come up with that activity, based on what you have heard about them for a month or 2. And then they'll go like, she or he remembers that I've been to China, I said that in one lesson a month ago. It takes a lot of monitoring skills. We need to be paying attention to what learners say. I myself, I have a feedback notebook. So whenever I'm hearing what students are saying, I write down their name, the name of the person I'm listening, and then I write down what they said. Of course, the focus is on language, because I want to give them feedback, correct things they said wrong, praise them from what they said right, whatever. But it's the information, isn't it? So when the person says, like, I don't know, I've been in China, and then it's Luis, I'm going to remember that Luis has been to China. So that can be used in an activity like Fahi's idea. Okay. I'm afraid we won't be able to share many of the activities today, but I'm sure that the activities you guys have shared are now at least, if not something new, something that is backed up with ideas like, okay, I know that I'm doing this activity because this student doesn't feel like he belongs here. So I'm doing this activity so he does. Does that make sense? What are the benefits that we may have from applying these kind of things to our lessons? Well, first of all, I think students may feel like coming. You know that student who comes once and then never comes again, and then comes another day and then never comes again. And then you see that student 3 times in a term, and then a parent says, yeah, but my son or my daughter doesn't want to go to the English lesson. You know that moment. This is when the bomb explodes, right? But anyways, this may be helpful with students who don't really feel like coming. At least they'll be having something to, if they don't like English, at least they'll be having something to rely on in the lesson. It helps build group cohesiveness, as I said. You feel like you belong in a group. It helps us prepare more meaningful lessons and therefore foster more meaningful learning. So what I'm learning, I'm actually interested in learning, or when I'm using this grammar structure, I want to use it because I'm sharing something special about me. And as a result for the institution you work for, it may help you have higher retention rates. In my case, it did wonders to my retention rates actually. So if you're a manager, or if you could talk to your managers, I'm pretty sure it would be an interesting idea. But how do we go from building rapport to fostering collaboration? So like, it's fine, they like coming to class, they're having fun, they feel acknowledged, I'm doing a good job as a teacher who touches people's lives, but they just don't want to do the things that they have to do. How do we go from this? How does social psychology help us do that? We're going to study two cases. This is the first one. And I'm going to show you sort of a snippet, a view of a group that I had and that triggered my studies into social psychology. It was the second week of the second term of the semester. The second week of the second term, which means I was pretty tired by then because you've taught half of the year, and then it's August, which lasts for 3 months, and then you're just getting more and more tired. I had this teenage pre-intermediate group comprised of 11 and 12-year-olds. It was a group from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., so it was kind of rough teaching at lunchtime. I was hungry myself. There was no ventilation in the room, and there were many latecomers. Students would come late in practically every lesson, even though it was I was teaching in a school. It was an extra activity that they had. English was the extra activity. And they studied at the school. So school finished, they had to come to the English lesson. Even though there were still many latecomers. That didn't really make lots of sense. I often got interrupted, so imagine you often get interrupted. People don't really let you teach. Too much use of Portuguese all the time. And the room is an absolute mess in the end of every single lesson, which means you have to organize everything, or you have to keep telling people, come on, this is not what you should be doing, show some respect, and imagine what people will think when they get into this room. I want you to picture yourselves as the teacher of this group here. Think about how you're feeling by now. I know it's only the second week, but you have a pretty good picture of what's going on. With your partners, you will share, let me see here, you will share what actions you would take to do that, and basing yourself on previous experiences, how effective do you think those actions you selected would be for this group specifically? Okay? Talk to your partners. Okay, guys, thank you. Thanks. Right. Okay. You girls at the back, can you share something you would do?
Yeah, we were talking about all the topics. So the first one would be like to do nice and something that doesn't look like a class, like a warm-up, so they would be interested in arriving in time.
Did you hear what's your name again? Paula. Did you hear what Paula said? No? She said, sort of, because she's at the curve, right? She said she would try something really nice and really engaging in the beginning of the lesson, like a warmer, for students to be interested in being in class on time. Sorry, anything else?
Yeah, we would, I sort of like use it with my kids' students at the end of the class while they're packing their stuff to go. They have to clean the room. Did
you hear that? So at the end of the class, she would encourage students to clean the room and actually rearrange things.
Clean, so they need to keep it clean when they leave and throw their trash in the trash can and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So leave everything okay, and then you can leave. Otherwise, you can't. So
fair enough.
Like a reward for being needy.
Mm-hmm. I had, of course, this was one of the first things I implemented. I had a little issue with that. Many of the students finished class at like 12:55. And then they had to go downstairs because there was a van waiting for them. They had to, leave the kids at their houses. So there was an issue. And when students stayed in the room for longer than like 1 or 2 minutes, then it would be hell and people would be like honking the horn of the car, you know, like there would be a buzz down there, and it was kind of troublesome. But that did work, yes. And I think it's a very valid idea.
Yeah, I have some students like that too, and I sort of like, it's a time management thing, so I know
towards the end of the lesson.
So they need to be ready first, and I already tell them, start packing your stuff, you have to go, and sometimes I'm late, almost all the time.
Which has to do, yeah, aren't we all late ever, right? Always. But I think it has to do with paying attention to the learner again, right? You know that one student has to leave early, and that's non-negotiable. So I'm going to give him some sort of different attention because he still has to do his job. I have to be honest, has anyone thought of calling parents? Talking to them about attitude or stuff like that? Interesting, because I'm a huge fan of dealing with things within the classroom. So things happen in the classroom, I like to solve them in class, and I tell my students that. I say, look, if I ever resort to your parents, then it means you did something really bad, because I like to deal with things here, and when I have to talk to them, things got, ugly. In this case, no parents were harmed in the making of this change. But I have to say, I have to be honest, this was the first impression I had of the group. And unfortunately, in many other groups, when I had this first impression, it was something that sort of stayed. So like, oh, they're always latecomers. They are the group that always speaks Portuguese. They are the group that never lets me teach. And we sometimes have that group, right? The group that the previous teacher says, oh, you got this group. Poor you. Oh, good luck with Otavinho. Yeah, I've tried everything. Is he Otávio? Ah, Otávio. Oh, you have a student who's called Otávio?
Yeah.
And who happens to be that kind of... Oh my God, yeah, we have a connection here. What's your name? Jonas. Talk to me later. Okay. But the thing is, we have to be very careful with this second week of the term, or first week of the term, or even before we begin the term and then the teacher tells us about the group. Because our grandmothers were right. The first impressions are the ones that last. And in fact, we have lots of theories of not only social, but psychology in general to say that, yes, the first impression I have on someone, or in this case on a whole group, is the one that will stay. There's a scientific reason for that. We base our judgments on second lung, thin slices of behavior. So this is what we call this is where the stereotypes come from. So you look at a person, the person's dressing in a certain way, speaks in a certain way, does something, your brain immediately creates a dossier on them. I'm pretty sure that today you looked at the people in the room, you looked at me, you looked at Andrea, there was, bam, dossier in your brain. It may be something that you don't realize, but it does happen. The problem is, our brains are very stubborn. The following social exchanges that you have after you meet somebody will be guided by your brain. Your brain will look at confirming the first impression and will ignore whatever sign that comes that would contest that first impression. So you know when somebody has a very bad impression on a person and you actually find that person really nice because the person does this and this and this and that, and they're super nice because they do that. And then the one who has a bad impression says like, oh really, but I don't like her. Really, but I don't like him. Because once he did this and have you ever heard anything like that? That's very dangerous because it's our brains tricking us. And what do we do to overcome that? We have to use our brains. And then things get difficult. There is another problem as well, that is, where do these first impressions come from? Previous experiences. So if you've had a difficult group and you had a horrible term with them, probably when you see a group like this that gives you that, I'm going to have that term again. This is your brain saying, I've been there, done that. this is what's about to happen. I know everything. I have a dossier. But how do we fight that? There are two ways we can see things. We can see things from a situational perspective or a dispositional perspective. When you see things from a situational perspective, it means